I'll call this meeting of the Scotts Valley Community Advisory Committee to order at 5:02 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. And let's get going here. I'm going to have roll call. We have Jody. Here. And Joel. Here. Jarrett. Here. Greg's here. And Courtney. We have a quorum established. Now, next call for the acceptance of the agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as listed?
So moved.
Joel makes a second.
Second.
No, made the motion to accept the agenda. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Jarrett will make a second. All in favor, signify with their hands up. Any abstentions or noes? Motion carried. The agenda has been accepted. It's now time for public comment. 3 minutes to mention anything, a subject that may not be on the accepted agenda. The council shall not substantially discuss or act upon it, but may list it for a future agenda item. Is there anybody that has any public comment? None in person. Anybody online? Do we even have anybody online?
There is nobody online.
There's nobody at this time?
Not this time.
Okay, thank you. Not hearing any public comment, we'll move on. We don't have a guest speaker, so we're going to go into council business. Consideration of the draft minutes. And we have a copy of the minutes for the council. Have you looked them over? And do I have a motion to accept the minutes as prepared?
I motion. I'll second.
Okay, the second, any discussion on the minutes? Not hearing any discussion, I close that, and we'll call for the vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes from the last meeting? Raise your hand for acceptance.
All right.
We have 5-0. Minutes have been there. The motion's been carried that the minutes have been accepted. We go on to old business now. Input into the county's general plan and local plans. I just received a notice that the general plan group is meeting on some Zoom, but I'm not sure. I didn't bring all the particulars. Does anybody have any input from the council about the general plan or the local area plan? Don't want to bring anything up.
I don't know if this is the right time, or do we have a special agenda? Yeah, no, none.
No, this is the right time.
No, I think it's right here. Nope, nothing for old business. Nothing for old business.
Okay, nothing for the, how about the audience? Yes.
Hey, Margot, there's a agenda item for this.
Not the letter.
She's talking about general comment on
Oh,
general
thank you.
Please give us your name and.
Margot Kambara,
Margot.
General Plan Advisory Committee member representing District 4. First, happy St. Patrick's Day, Scotts Valley. Congratulations on this historic evening where you have your first broadcast of your advisory council and home territory. So, bravo. I have an update for you on the update that Community Development presented to the Board of Supervisors last Tuesday at the Board of Supervisors meeting on Lake County 2050, which is a county's general plan and local area plans update effort. At that meeting, there were recommendations from the local area plan advisory committees and the general plan advisory committee, which were reviewed. The changes that these committees reviewed had to do with land use designation, community growth boundaries, and planning area boundaries. The update to the Board of Supervisors was informational only. No action was taken. Community Development Director Maria Turner reported that the GPAC, the General Plan Advisory Committee, accepted the local area plan advisory committee's recommendations. Actually, the General Plan Advisory Committee meeting format had to change in February because the General Plan Advisory Committee had concerns with the local area plan committee's recommendations. The General Plan Advisory Committee's comments on these recommendations, they did not proceed during the February meeting. Director Turner stated that the LAPAC's and the GPAC's recommendations would be presented to the Board of Supervisors as a whole. No GPAC input on the LAPAC's recommendations would happen. So this brings up one issue, and that is the GPACs is underutilized as a Board of Supervisor aid. Big picture is for the General Plan Advisory Committee to take a large look at all the recommendations and data concerning updating the general plan and the local area plans. Instead, the Board of Supervisors will be inundated with these individual recommendations and data. For Scotts Valley, so we're going to go into what the recommendations are. For Scotts Valley and the Lakeport area plan residents, here are the recommendations of interest. The Crystal Lago project, the recommendation is to return those lands to the original land designations, rural lands. There is a proposed Walnut Drive housing project by landowner request, and that is to change the housing density allowed for that area to medium density. It is slated for senior living. There is another recommendation for Scotts Valley area, and that is for Kelly's Camp, which is a former KOA site, which is also in a floodplain. The Upper Lake Neese Area Plan Advisory Committee recommends changing the land designation for this parcel to rural lands. There is also a recommendation to change the planning area boundary for Scotts Valley. Right now, it's split between Lakeport and Upper Lake. So this brings us to issue 2 when it comes to the general plan update. It was a public comment made during the meeting that the whole update effort seems very rushed, and that public input schedule and lower public participation is a factor affecting the quality of data that we're getting. And the specific example was given for the Middletown area, where Middletown and Lower Lake, where Zoom was a primary means of meeting, and there was low turnout. So there was a request from that area to have more in-person meetings. Now, to community development's credit, that was a heroic effort to meet that compressed meeting schedule of all the local area plan committee meetings in a very short period of time. But the big question is it meeting Lake County's needs to plan for the future that we dream of 20 years from now? So are we being penny wise and grant foolish by being driven by grant money that's available to us and just accepting less than stellar results, just settling? Do we want to settle? I pose that for you to ponder. We don't have to answer that now, but we should think about the Lake County that we want in 2050. So again, we're talking about the GPAC can help Lake County and the Board of Supervisors look at that big picture view for developing the unincorporated areas of Lake County. versus the LAPACs taking a more granular look at the local areas. This brings us to some themes that the GPAC noticed, and one of them is preserving agricultural lands. What we noticed and what we brought up at our last GPAC meeting was we're seeing agricultural lands being whittled away, parcel by parcel. It's not just rezoning, it's the encroachment of the community growth boundary. What we noticed is that some ag lands get rezoned to, say, industrial. And then a few years pass, then there is a request to have that industrial land become part of the community growth boundary. And from there, it can be taken out of agricultural production. And once that happens, it's most unlikely that you'll ever get that land restored to ag production. So that takes us to what our next steps.
Okay, before you go on, why don't you turn that little thing and lower that mic for you, that on the stem there, on the, you'll hit that little thing and it'll reset down, right?
No, she's fine right there, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure it's comfortable for you.
So that brings us to what our next steps. Right now, a lot of input has been gathered. It's going to be given to the consultant. The consultant is going to start drafting the general plan update and the local area plan updates. Also in progress, the consultant will start working on the environmental impact report for the general plan. And that we don't expect to see until spring 2026. Meanwhile, I suggest that we, citizens of Lake County, continue to dream and to jot down our ideas of what we want to see for Lake County in 2050, and that we compile these ideas and then we prepare to forward that to community development and to the consultant. And so we wait for the drafts next.
Well, I think you brought some good information there. That's why when I lived in San Jose or Santa Clara County, I watched all the cherry orchards disappear around me. I was in the middle of a cherry orchard. When I went to, came up here in Lake County in 1964, there's nothing but pear orchards all over the place, and look where they are now. And then when I went to Riverside County, there was orange groves everywhere. And when I left, I retired, there was hardly any. Now, is this a trend of California that we might want to mention to this area plan about how things are rapidly changing with pressure to put more concrete down and less there? I don't know, but that's something that's a trend that we may want to look at. Secondly, was there any mention on the Highland Springs and boundary change, as well as the north part of extending our boundary all the way up to the end of Scotts Valley Road, mentioned at all?
Not that I recall.
Okay.
There was talk about the airport or the airfield, but no recommendation is going to be made by community development. All of that is going to be presented to the board of supervisors for their board to make the decision on that. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to your question.
Don't be sorry, you've given a very complete report.
Oh.
Much appreciated. Really brought us up to speed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments on the area plan or local plan? We have some new folks that just came in. If one of them would like to come up, I have an extra agenda if you'd like to follow it.
Actually, I've got one here also.
You have an extra one, Jody?
Yeah.
Hold on, we'll give you another one here.
Yeah, actually, I do too.
Okay. So welcome. Yes, Brad.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair, I
Supervisor.
believe I do recall a mention during that presentation of the northern boundary of Scotts Valley being discussed, so I'd have to go back and confirm what came up, but I believe there was a mention of that consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. like I said, that we're not trying to grab land as far as a boundary. We're trying to see what's the best use of boundaries that makes deciding the future of our county the most configurative and most feasible. So with that, if there's no other comments, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is ongoing flood valley drainage discussion. So we are looking at the council members. Any council members have any comments on this item 2 of old business? Not hearing any or seeing any?
Well, both of us,
Okay, I do hear one.
yeah, Joel and I are both here today because we had Sky give Joel a ride and Jody give me a ride so that we could make it, here because we're both flooded in. And I have, most of the focus on our disaster preparedness is wildfires. But for Scotts Valley, I believe equal thoughts should be, equal consideration should be discussed in regards to floods and the fact that people can't go to work and they can't access emergency care if they have to without somebody picking them up, or they have to buy an expensive four-wheel drive truck if they possibly want to risk driving through the water, which is always not recommended by emergency personnel. So I think that should be something that we should make a note of for the future. Is half the year we have too much water, and the other half of the year we have the fire hazards, which we always have spent more time on. So,
Thank you, Cornelia.
Yeah. I had an interesting discussion with Scott Lubich, who owns property down by Joel. And he monitors the creek flows a lot, and I'm working with him on the Decker Bridge relative to fish migration and different things. But he has really noticed this trend that we're getting flooding much, much faster now with the much smaller rain events than we ever did before. And I mean, he's been there his whole life, there on the creek and watched that. So I think that's something that's going to be real interesting to look into. On one hand, we know we're having more flooding because the creek channel needs work, but on the other thing is that actually the way, would it be a lot better if we got the creek channel work done? And it looks like the answer to that is yes now, because we're getting flooding much faster and more often than we used to, without the rainstorms being big enough to justify it. Yeah.
Well, thank you both. Here's the hurdles or the challenges we have to that. Because this is the only place that I know of, and I could be wrong, in the county that continuously floods or the drainage fills up where it makes it very difficult for the local residents to get around in this county. I don't know of any other area that faces this constantly. So we are in a certain geographical location that this is going to be a continuous problem, and has been for years. And because over the years, and I'm talking 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it's been, and people just take it for granted while the folks out here are the ones that are suffering. And there may be 5 or 6 people that have a trouble getting out or more. When we look at a disaster management approach and we talk about a disaster, we're talking about a type of event that is overwhelming to that local area where you're calling in resources, reinforcements, and that the local government that's managing it needs a lot of extra help, where we don't see that in this case. I've mentioned before to this council that we need to talk to the county or the sheriff about particular things that could be done locally when the people are rained out. How can we assist them in a more of a smaller emergency type of call, where we can assist them, make sure they're checked on, they can get in and out somehow, or whatever it takes to continue that. And I think that one thing, if we're going to look at before we change the whole landscape of trying to control flooding out here, that maybe local government needs to have some type of an idea when it's raining. It's not just a matter of going up and opening the valves culvert to make sure water's flowing in and out. That we have other people that are constantly being affected, and how do we establish that to the local government and the departments that have the resources to respond to assist our local citizens out here. So I don't know what to do. Yes, Cornelia.
Just a suggestion of some of the things, or one of the things that could happen is negotiations to open easements across properties to reach the other side. For the 20+ years, 25 years I've lived here, the end of ICOF used to be opened during emergencies by the road department, and the property owner, who is not a local resident, has refused to allow the road department access to open that gate. We used to be able to, during emergencies only, drive over the hill down to the water treatment plant, and because the road is basically underwater between, the bridge and Scotts Valley Road. It's only about 20 feet. So we could raise that 20 feet a foot and raise the 20 feet in front of his house a foot, but that would be a lot more expensive than just maybe negotiating an easement across properties that would, help people escape. It wouldn't be like a road through somebody's property. It would be emergency vehicle accessible.
Well, maybe it could be in
easement.
the sense of a semi-evacuation plan during this particular type of thing.
Right.
That
so,
might
but,
give us a toothhold in negotiation.
but I think, the property owner might not be aware of the power that this person, that the effect an easement would have on local residents. But that only helps ICOF. It doesn't help the rest of Scotts Valley. But having lived here, I bought this property with the full knowledge of its dangers, and I'm happy to deal with it myself. But if there are options where we could take small steps to make it easier for everyone, I think we should maybe try to address those. And because for a valley that has basically just one way in, one way out, and then the side valleys having only a way in and no way out during an emergency, that I don't know who to bring this topic up to, but
Well, how many people are on Hendricks? I'm sorry, on Weisskopf? How much do you guesstimate population-wise
a
living
few
there?
hundred, couple hundred. I could find out more details, but since we were bringing it up, I thought I'd mention it.
Yeah.
And we're having a flood event, only it's during certain months of the year, and then later it's just like, who gives it?
Well, here again, we have an established history over the years of flooding situations, which really stops the citizens from having to go through a period of rain where they're locked in. And it's more or less been accepted. It's something, it's the type of thing with everybody else except the poor folks that are living here. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know who to go to. I have tried discussing it with different folks about maybe there could be a little bit more coordinated effort when we are getting a rain such as this, that activates a certain procedure, a checklist of the valve's culvert being open, a checklist of the welfare for people in that area that may not have communications. Some places no internet or Wi-Fi availability, phones,
That's the
so
same
forth.
thing, yeah.
So there's the first thing in a disaster or an emergency, you want to establish communications to find out what's going on. And then in order to get them help, you got to have a way of transportation or a route to get in there. Those are two things you got to establish.
Which brings us back to the topic of broadband for all. And I have to have AT&T. I pay $100 for that landline. It only serves me the function to be harassed by telemarketers and to call the sheriff in an emergency, but I still have to have it, and I have to have satellite internet because there's no other, options for this valley. But again, I was aware of that when I moved here. But still, if everyone else is starting to work on these subjects, we should keep bringing them up. So perhaps we will get like maybe some better internet service without everybody having to pay so much.
Well, this particular item, I'm a little bit at fault. Being a firefighter for 35 years, when the alarm went off, I react now, I respond. When the alarm goes off out here, there's not that much of a response. When we were fiddling around with surveys and studies and transferring money around and trying to figure out what we've been trying to do for the last 3 years of trying to come to this, it was very frustrating for me to see that we are not stepping forward. I think we have new leadership. I think there's a bright light ahead of us where maybe things may be looked at in a different light that might move us towards collaborating, reaching out, forming a network. Maybe we could establish some ideas that we could look at. I know that Scotts Valley is like any other community in this county. We all have priorities, and we have to try to be a squeaky wheel or to share with that. So that's the thought. Is there any other thoughts on that from the council? Yes, Joel?
Yeah, thank you. I feel qualified to talk about water since my place is flooding again. So I don't want to complain about the water because that's one of the great natural resources of the valley. And Clear Lake is one of the great natural resources of the county. On the other hand, it seems to me that when this flooding is going on, the water is being wasted, or at least not used as well as it could be. If it could be stored in some way, it could be available for agriculture during the summer when it is needed. If it could be controlled so it doesn't flood, there might be less sediment going into Clear Lake. And I'm concerned about the Clear Lake only because the discussion of the Clear Lake hitch and the Endangered Species Act, that those people are saying that the sediment in the lake may be interfering with the welfare of the hitch, I suppose reproduction, although I don't know. But anyway, that sediment doesn't need to be in Clear Lake, as far as I know. So the water's being wasted. There's also the issue of having that water available to provide water to the hitch when they need it during spawning, and not being, I don't know if there's any Clear Lake hitch spawning now being swept away by the flood in Scotts Valley. But it seems to me that that extreme, too much flooding and then drought could be controlled. We've had a little bit of discussion previously about a dam on Scotch Creek, which I think is still a really neat idea and might address the issue of regulating the flow and helping the hitch and helping the farmers at the same time. There's other solutions that I hear about which I haven't been able to get any information on. For example, there are programs apparently for ponds on farmland. I'd be happy to have a pond on my farm. It could be used, I suppose, for firefighting or fire prevention. It could be used for wildlife. It could be used for help. If hitch got up any place near my place, I'd be happy to have it released to them. I don't need it that much for irrigation. But I don't know, I haven't heard a thorough discussion, recent discussion, of either the dam or a containment, a pond of some kind on property. We have heard about water storage tanks, but those are relatively small, sort of in the 10,000 gallon or I believe area. So not very large. I'm actually open to having a pond put on my property. I can give up the land if it were for this valuable use. But I'm sort of waiting for someone to come up with a more specific idea about how that can be accomplished. I keep hearing that there's money available for some of these projects, but I haven't seen it yet. So anyway, I just hate to have the water wasted. The Clear Lake Hitch, I think, probably needs some regulation of the flooding and need the water in the summer when there's drought.
Thank you, Joel. I think we're going to need a lot of brainstorming on this project, but I'd like to recognize our next speaker for the public. Say your name, please.
Yes, good evening, Tom Lasik, or afternoon, I'm not sure. My wife and I, we attend a lot of these advisory councils, and what I'm hearing here is something similar to something that I've heard at the Cobb Advisory Council. There, of course, is very sensitive to wildfire. They basically took it upon themselves, at least to a large degree, to own the situation and come up with plans. So here, what I'm hearing is that you have flooding, you've had flooding historically, but it's getting worse. You have ideas, there's been discussions, but my question is there a plan? And is that plan addressing your needs? And what you as an advisory council would like to do to make the plan meet your needs? It seems like you have legitimate concerns, but it's more of a rhetorical question. Where's the plan? The plan that says when it does flood, do you have recommendations? Do you have ideas of easements? You have other ideas that sound pretty good, but is there a plan that incorporates all this? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your input, Tom. As far as a plan, I've been on this, this is my third year as the chair, and the year before that was the vice chair. We tried putting a plan together. To me, a plan is where if you have a plan, you organize that plan, you staff it, you give direction, and you control it, and then you reevaluate as you go along. And I've used that for fighting fires or project work or what do you want to call it. I tried to share with this council, with the past supervisor, to how we can develop a plan. If we're going to have to do studies, we're going to have to do timelines and spend money or monies that were available to us, how we could plan this. I didn't do this openly. I was more behind the scenes, but I guess I failed to try to get the plan concreted in some type of a focus. You have a good point here. If you're going to do something, you need a plan. And I guess the thought is here, how do we develop that plan? One is we have a committee, we do brainstorming, we put in the concerns, we build, organize what needs to be done, and start staffing and looking at ways we can do. We have to always keep in mind that this council is responsible to the 4th District Supervisor in representing our citizens' needs and concerns to the supervisor. So we have guidance from our supervisor on how we get this done and working together to strengthen that relationship. So a plan is needed. To what point that we can start to do this, or how we want to do this now that we have new leadership. Maybe we can find a committee or a focus of a plan that start working with it. Maybe we could ask for the county, some of their planners, to take a more serious look at a situation over the years that has just kind of become a historical thing, and that there's rain here and the best response is to go open the valves covert and just let it happen, you see. So maybe there's some focus there. So
I think we should table the brainstorming for.
I'm just saying in the future, we're not going
Yeah.
to do it now.
No, I mean, as an agenda item,
Yeah.
because we're going to go.
We have
beyond.
one more speaker here. Go ahead. Your name, please, again.
Yes, Margot Kambara. Just a quick footnote. Greg, when you were saying that there's new leadership and maybe this is a time to revisit building plans, and same with Cornelia saying that, there are the same needs and more people are being affected by flooding. There are some resources and new attention to climate change and climate resiliency. Both are themes of the general plan. So we can take a closer look at what the general plan has to say about climate change and climate resiliency, and what does the county's officer for climate change, what kind of resources does she have to share with the rest of the county? Thank you.
Good thoughts, thank you. Yes, Sky?
Okay, so Sky Hoyt, and just to put a little historical perspective on this, this advisory council was formed in response to flooding when Tina Scott was supervisor. For those who weren't there, which I think is everyone in the room, it was down at the senior center in Lakeport, and there was like 75 people there. Tremendous flooding year. I think the road was closed for 45 days that winter, not all at one stretch, but 3 different times.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been going on historically for a while. And
I mentioned that.
well, yeah, a while, yeah, but you didn't mention how long ago this council was formed, and it was formed in response to flooding. And now it's drifted away from the focus. And also, when Tina Scott, before she resigned, she had, she designated, I believe it was, and Brad's corrected me on this, but $100,000 of, I think it was cannabis money that came to her, be directed to projects. And she left the wish that that would go to vegetation maintenance in the creek. Now, that money has since been put off into some other fund, and I can't really address that, but that's no longer here for this advisory council to delineate where that's gonna go. That was a really sad thing. So that's a bad deal. One of the things that did happen while she was supervisor, she prevailed on them to do what we now call the valved or gated culvert down here at about the 4,000 block, where the roadside ditch flows into Scotts Creek. And for people who don't know, what used to happen is when Scotts Creek would come up higher than the ditch, water would flow back up along the roadsides. And I never really appreciated how dramatic it was until one time I saw it when there was no flow in the ditch and there was just water in the creek. It was a volume of water about 18 inches wide, shooting hundreds of feet into the ditch. It wasn't a little glug, glug, glug thing. It was humongous amount of water going in there. So she realized this. The road department supervisor at this time, he'd always said it was a terrible thing. The creek backflowed into the ditch. And we did get a project. They went out and they did that. Unfortunately, the road supervisor had designed it with not only a culvert, but also a pump to lift water over the levee when there was adequate room in the creek and there was water in the ditch. Well, that got cut out for economy. So I think that should be looked at again as a realistic solution, a concrete solution now to problems. Look at that of putting pumping back on there, you know, and now the sad thing is when the road floods, I can't go down to look at it. So I can't give you my own personal experience of, well, how high was the creek, how high was the ditch, but when they close that culvert, there's no more water leaving the Scotts Valley flood area. It can't leave. You know, that's really important to get. Okay. The other thing is, and I think touched on here somewhat, Jerry was talking about it, is the amount of water coming out of the BLM land, the uplands up there. You know, you always ask people, well, is it more than it was before? And, well, it's always been a lot of water. But, and like Scott's telling you, well, there's more water coming down the creek now. We really need to look at that. And I know it's almost a hopeless thing, but we got to get in the federal government's face and stop this erosion and stop these horrendous flows coming down that creek. You know, it's really bad. I mean, erosion is an insidious drain on humanity. That's the topsoil of the earth flowing downstream. Every time you see that chocolate milk look in that creek, that's a failure of humanity to manage the earth's resources. And we've just, now it's come to the point we accept it. It's just gonna happen. It's a terrible thing and it needs to stop.
And plus, we used to have the levee system out here that assisted somewhat too. Let's go on from there. Thank you, Sky, for your input. Go ahead, Brad.
Comments still open?
Mr. Supervisor, go ahead.
Yeah, Supervisor Brad Rasmussen. I just wanted to mention, to follow up, so it was originally 160,000. If you remember, Supervisor Green worked out before he left, 60,000 got dedicated to the Public Services Department to be used on upgrades to Highland Springs Park. The other 100,000 was dedicated to Water Resources to do, at the time, what was discussed as a flood study, which they were going to add on to another study project they had going on. I might suggest that if this council wishes, maybe bring Water Resources back out and have further discussion about that 100,000 that's dedicated for this area. Because as far as I know, none of that's been spent. It was yet. They were going to add it into the next contract to add a flood study on. But if you guys wish to further discuss that with Water Resources, maybe we should have them come on the agenda to another meeting. Thank you.
Well noted. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Okay, this last speaker, because we need to start moving on.
Yeah, this is just real quick. Not to put too fine a point on the importance of a plan, but once you do have a plan, that's opens up a lot of doors for grants and for funding and for things like that, because a lot of places show me the plan. And if you have a plan, you can get government and sometimes private funding to do other studies, mitigation measures. So the plan is nowadays the price of entry. So it is quite important. Thank you.
Point well taken. Thank you. Okay, this is well noted. I think that we'll be looking at bringing out Water Resources and following up. There's some other information here I have that I'll discuss later in the meeting that might lead or connect with this somewhat. We're going to move on to item C, new business. Discuss and approval of the letter to the Community Development Department and the Board of Supervisors awarding the agricultural parcels regardless of the proposed growth boundary changes. And I'm going to ask council to go first.
No, Margot's going to read the letter for us.
Okay, go ahead, Margot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Margot Kambara. For those who are in Zoomland and Pegland, we have a draft of a letter for the Scotts Valley Community Advisory Council members to sign. It is to be addressed to the Board of Supervisors and Community Development Director, Maria Turner. Date is today, March 17th. I will start reading from the letter draft. The Scotts Valley Community Advisory Council, CVCAC, shares the community sentiment revealed by the Lake County 2050 surveys and supports the General Plan Advisory Committee's affirmation to preserve land for agricultural production by retaining those parcels' land use designation. We value the agricultural nature of the county and believe that thoughtful development can preserve these highly regarded attributes for all Lake County residents. Preservation efforts include resisting encroachment of community growth boundaries, CGB, that take land suitable for agriculture out of production. This council challenges the argument that parcels under 40 acres or 10 acres are not economically viable for agricultural use. As the county prepares for the future, it needs to update its understanding of agriculture. Smaller acreages are essential for diversified agriculture to grow. Carefully drafted regulations are needed to prevent potential residential abuse of smaller acreage operations. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Scotts Valley Community Advisory Council members, Jody Altick, Joel Cobble, Jared Hendricks, Greg Scott, Cornelia Sieber Davis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for reading that. And both Sky and Margot worked really hard to make this letter so readable.
Well, again, we want to make sure we don't end up like Riverside County with the oranges or the Santa Clara was losing all the cherry orchards. We want to protect our agricultural land. It's such a natural resource that we want to protect, and so I certainly support this letter, and I would say that unless there's some discussion that we ought to take a vote, we will sign this letter and support it.
Does any other council member have something to say?
I have something. Thank you very much for this letter. I like ag land. I'd like to add something, and I hope this won't sound like a criticism, but I think economically viable is not where you want to make your stand. My property is not economically viable. It's still valuable for the community, I think, to have it available or not having houses all over it or having whatever businesses on it. It's good for it to be empty and available for wildlife or whatever is going to be out there or whatever I can grow. I don't think I'm capable of making it economically viable.
But just may I just point out
Yeah.
that the point was just that people assume that a parcel of a certain small size cannot be economically viable. Doesn't mean that all ag land has to be economically viable.
Right.
But a lot of people, since over the last month, since we've been going back and forth, Sky and Margot and I, it's just talking to people, they think, well, if you don't have a certain amount of acreage, you don't have enough space to grow something at a scale that's economically viable. That's what that point was supposed to address.
Yes, and I think that's fine. I don't want my place to be economically viable, if that's the standard. I don't need it to be economically viable.
But we don't want somebody to rezone it based on that.
And I don't think that should be the line. I agree. I don't think that should be the line. It should not be, oh, this is not economically viable. You have to have 10,000 acres to be economically viable. No, I don't care. It should be agricultural anyway. The economic viability of it is a distraction. It's great if it is. I'd love to make bundles of money on my place. But I don't think that's where you can make your stand and draw your line. It says, no, we're going to have this be ag land anyway because of its other values.
Do you approve of the letter?
Yes.
Any other council comments?
No, I
before
was
go
just
to-
gonna say, it says here, as the county prepares for the future, it needs to update its understanding of agriculture, and that would involve.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Oh, sorry. That would involve,
You gotta really pull that up,
utilizing
Jim.
smaller parcels. That most people don't understand, that small parcels are still very usable and very, valuable. Oy.
See if you don't speak into the microphone.
I'm sorry,
You
yeah.
have to do that, and then
Okay.
that's annoying for everyone. So just be in the habit of
Okay.
speaking into the microphone.
Well, we're looking at this, the value of the letter that is, I know, it's the circumference, I think, Joel, it includes that thought that we have to be understanding. It just doesn't narrow it down. Jody, did you have something else to add?
No, that's it, thank you.
All right, thank you. Sky, do you have that address on the subject?
Yeah, Sky, right, so just for those who don't know, I was a market gardener here in Lake County for more than 20 years. I came in 92, I think it was, and I looked very hard to find a parcel that would work for me because I was looking for small acreage, and I did find a
Sky, can you get a little closer?
Okay, I did find a pre-existing parcel. That was before the subdivision map act, and it was 6 2/3 acres. But there were hardly any parcels to look at that were zoned agriculture, that were small parcels, and that were affordable for people of modest means. And I stand as an example, I believe an economically viable farm at 175,000 is the minimum economically viable farm. And my farm had much lower grosses other years, but it's a complicated decision. But I was told many times over that the 40-acre minimum, which was the agricultural minimum at that time, was based on what was considered to be a viable family farming unit in pears or walnuts or wine grapes at that time. So that's why it needs to come up to a more modern standard. and also different options are available. It's an important question, not to be looked over, the fact that it could open up land for residential development unless carefully crafted.
Well, we all know that the,
Jared hasn't had a chance.
I didn't see you raise your hand.
That's all right. I just would like to get on the table, when we talk about economically viable, a farm can be a sideline for somebody too. It doesn't have to be their entire focus.
All right.
And there's lots of niche markets and stuff now. And in fact, when you talk about small operations, a lot of them have to start out as a part-time operation and build up to where it's a more viable thing, and then they get more land if they need to. But the idea of having farms as a sideline is a particularly healthy thing for families and kids in my mind, so I'd like to keep that on the table.
Well, we all know that farming is a gamble. You have your good years and bad years. And if you have a good year, you don't want to spend all your money that you made. You want to save it for the bad years. So there's I think when we talk about in this letter getting to understand the agriculture community better, that's one of the things we have to look at, is there's bad years, good years, and we need to go on there. Okay,
Are we all in favor?
are we all,
How about you?
does the council all want to sign this letter and go move forth with it? I do.
Yeah. I think it's very clear and well written.
Okay?
Yes.
Do you have a second for this motion?
So I second that.
All right. So we have a second on the motion, and we'll move forward. So Brad will sign this letter. I guess we forward it to you. Is that what we want to do?
Well, I think you're going to send it to Community Development.
Maria Turner?
Entire Board of Supervisors.
Okay. All right.
The way I read it.
So you got a note that we want to send it to Maria Turner. And a complete board. All soups. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next item.
Okay, we should vote on that, I suppose.
We did, didn't we? We all voted that we're going to sign it. The motion carried on that one. All right, up. Pardon?
Did you already take the vote?
Yeah, we did. We all agreed to sign it. All right,
You better sign it.
I'm getting jabbed in the ribs here. Boy, trying to read this agenda where I'm going to stay on mic. Okay.
Yes.
All right, updates, calendars, and miscellaneous reports. We're going to start with our District 4 Supervisor, Brad Rasmussen. Any reports, sir?
Yeah, I wanted to report, because the question has come up, that the Bureau of Land Management office in Ukiah supposedly is on the surplus list for the federal government, so there's a potential that office could be shut down. I am in communication with our congressman's office about it to update me if they get more information on that. I don't have a current status of what may or may not happen with it, or if they do close it, where will those folks be working out of? As I understand right now, the BLM office in Ukiah serves our Cow Mountain area, which is North and South Cow Mountain, the Black Forest over in Kelseyville along Mount Conocti, also the Cache Creek Natural Area and the Cache Creek Wilderness, which some of that is also part of the Berryessa Snow Mountain Monument, as well as the Indian Valley BLM area and part of the Knoxville area. So
Wow.
I will provide further information when I get it, but just wanted to report that. And then, other than that, just encourage members to monitor what's going on the Board of Supervisor agendas, and if you have concerns or comments, to send those to the board members prior to the meetings. And we do have the e-comment feature, which you can access through the online agenda to do a comment, which would send it to all supervisors and the county staff at the same time. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Appreciate it. E, observations regarding groundwater, fire mitigation, Scotts Valley infrastructure. Anybody in the council have any comment on this?
I think we covered that already this time.
Okay.
I have nothing new to update. The only thing that comes to mind is that I had discussions with the Lakeport Fire Chief a while ago, and he would like to have our annual Neighbor Fest a little earlier, but we have an ongoing problem with high water tables, which make our favorite place to have the event not possible because, it's just too muddy.
When is he wanting to have that event happen?
Before it gets hot,
Oh,
before the fire season starts, he would
Oh.
like, that's just his preference, of course. We were going to ask Kelly's Camp, but they also have a high water table, and now it's sold. And I can't think of another location except for this building, and this building is just not large enough for the kind of event that we want to hold. So if anyone has any suggestions, we're in the planning phase for Neighbor Fest 2025.
Do we know who bought Kelly's Camp?
I don't,
I heard that maybe yes. Go.
Scotts Valley Band of Polo Indians.
I'm sorry?
Scotts Valley Band of Polo.
Oh,
wow.
okay, well, thank you.
Wow,
Good,
fabulous.
Good.
are they amenable to having a public event there?
I think we might be, yeah. We
Oh.
might be, we're in the process of finalizing the funding for the property, so it just depends.
It doesn't have to be this year, but it's just a thought, to have more places to have an event.
Yeah, I'm sure we would be open.
Can you, after the meeting, exchange contact information with Cornelia?
I have your contact. You should introduce yourself.
I was waiting for, I don't know when on the agenda.
Well, you know what? I'm going to make an exception on the agenda right now to have to allow you to introduce yourselves, please.
Yes.
And thank you for being here today.
I was going to introduce you in the beginning, but you hadn't arrived yet.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Good afternoon, evening. My name is Nazba Ben. I am the Tribal Emergency Services Coordinator for Scotts Valley Band of Pomo Indians. Let's see, I've been in the position now for about 6 months, and I'm working with the tribe on their multi-tribal hazard mitigation plan. So a lot of the information that you guys are sharing out here and with the information that we just revealed that Scotts Valley bought Kelly's Campground, that property will be a part of our multi-tribal hazard mitigation plan, which does open it up for public use in the search for funding. If you guys need it as a standalone document, it is also being considered to be annexed into the Lake County hazard mitigation plan, but we've been working on it with the tribe for the last year alone, but we have all of the 5 of the 6 local tribes that are all in that plan. So we don't know if we're going to annex into the county's plan, but it is available if you guys are interested in checking it out or using it for finding future funding for flooding, fire, any other hazards. I think there's even like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, things like that, forest health, and those items. So use it if you want to check it out. Yeah. And I'll have our other staff introduce themselves as well.
Welcome.
yes, thank you.
My name is Dimitri Novoa. I'm a Scotts Valley tribal member, and I work for my tribe as the EPA technician. And I'm very excited to meet you guys, and yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Alewa Shea, Marie Alvarez. I'm also a Scotts Valley Enrolled Tribal member. I also work for my tribe. I'm an EPA and cultural assistant. So I assist with anything Nazwa and Dimitri are doing, but I also do a lot of cultural things too. And we've been working on acquiring Kelly's Camp since around the time I started. I've been with Scotts Valley for a year now, and yeah, very excited to get it.
It's very exciting because it used to be our homelands way back when, and just seeing all the like vegetation come back and all those cultural resources out here is just exciting.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you being here. You know, the more we gather together, the more ideas we get to exchange. That strengthens our community. For your information, I was the disaster manager for Riverside County and 15 cities. So let's exchange information. Maybe I can give you some tips or ideas or things from my experience that I've learned that might help you.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah.
And Patricia Franklin is our Tribal Environmental and Natural Resource Department Director. Sorry.
And what was
That's
his name
a long
again?
word. Patricia Franklin.
Okay.
She came to the Neighbor Fest.
Okay.
Yeah, you met her.
So make sure Cornelia has your email so we can send out future notifications of this meeting. We want to make sure that you know that you're welcome here.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to continue on. No other discussion on.
Well, one thing I wanted to suggest, Cornelia, if the Medinas are not available earlier on in the season, right down the road from me, Grant Lindeblad's place, he's got a little place set back off the road, and I know that he's held a few events there. I don't know if they've been family weddings or what, but it's a big wide open space. I don't know that there's kitchen, site available at all, but he's got a nice little setup there that could be something that as an alternative to the Medinas if they aren't available.
Would you mind asking?
I'll try and
Yeah. The
track him
Medina
down.
Ranch it's not that they don't want us, it's just
I
that
know.
we can't drive on their property without destroying it.
Right. That's what I'm asking about, why we need to, what month we need to be looking at.
May,
Oh, May.
yeah, May or
Okay.
June.
Okay. Well, early June, maybe they would be available, but I'll ask.
Okay.
So I received a request from John Seppa, Senior Transportation Planner of the Lake Area Planning Council, and he's requested to give a presentation next week. He wants to discuss about the I'm just trying to catch the.
He wants to present at the next meeting, is that what you're saying?
Well, his projects over the next 20 years in the public transit and so forth. So I would ask that we accept it. We'll put him on the agenda. I'll contact him, find out how much time he needs for a presentation and a focus on that. And and so I'd like to ask the council's permission to make sure we have him address our council next meeting in April.
Sounds good.
Any objection to that? If not, we'll move forward to contacting him.
Sure.
We'll invite him as our guest speaker to come and share with us all, and so to do that.
It would also be nice to invite Public Works before the flood season's over to one of our meetings.
Well, we also want to just consider water resources to the report of what they have going on too. So we want to plan the Public Works and water resources to address this council on an update.
Can we handle both in one meeting?
I think we could. I think maybe we could have this fella the next meeting in April, and then May have the other two, water resources and Public Works.
I think Public Works should be before this rain stops.
Well, we could, I don't see why we couldn't have Public Works and this fella both at the next meeting.
Sounds good to me?
And so we need to follow up. Do you have a contact for Public Works? All right, so we'll contact these two, and then we'll come back to water resources for May. Let's look at that as agenda items to keep us moving.
April,
Okay, I thought you said Public Works and this guy, John, are,
in April. Both.
I thought water Boy, now.
Let's do both
Doggone
in
it.
April.
Hey,
So water resources in May?
well, I was talking about, what's this guy's, you got that letter from me, where is he, transportation?
John, can't we do both in
Well,
April?
the point is, I'm trying to get you to narrow it down. I got 3 things we're trying to coordinate here.
All of them.
All 3?
We just won't talk so much.
I've seen Mr. Speaker's presentation many times. It's only going to be about 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do
So I
both
think
then.
you can handle the APC and the water resources and public works if they're available. We don't know yet. If they're available, be here.
And then, whoever's the chair, I'm gonna give you my email address so that you can include me so I get your agenda before, because when the speaker comes, he needs a, projector and a screen for his presentation.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we'll get Cornelia, because she does all the emails.
Okay, perfect.
So we'll do all 3 next of May, all right? Everybody comfortable with that?
For April.
For April.
Correct. Thank you.
And I'll respond back to John, and you respond to Public Works and Water Resources. Do you have those contacts?
Just CC me and I'll CC you.
Okay, so we'll get all 3 of those people together. All right, very good.
And we'll CC Thomas too.
Okay, so let's go into item F, council member roundtable, quick updates and calendar items, anything from any of the council members?
I'm good.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Not for me.
Yeah, I don't have anything either.
Okay, let's discuss then the the discussion for the items to be on the next agenda. We just discussed 3 of them, 3 speakers or 3
Yep.
presentations. Did we want to follow up on another report from the general plan and local plan, or is there going to be any update on that?
Yes, I
Might be
think
due?
we should put Margot on as an item.
Okay, Margot, is that good with you? So you got that down? Okay. Do we want to, first we'll follow the supervisor's report and the minutes and the, okay, so what?
Would you like to have a timed item on the agenda? Or just speak during public comment?
We could speak during public comment
Okay.
until we officially purchase the land, and then we can become an item.
Whatever you want, just let us know.
Just remember in public comment, it can't be something that's already on the agenda.
Oh, got it, okay.
Okay, so if it's on the agenda, you can comment on it at what time it comes up. But public comment is something other than that, so
Oh, I see, okay.
just
Yeah,
so you
it's to
understand.
give people a chance that, to speak on things we didn't think of putting on the agenda.
Okay. Would it be of interest to have the hazard mitigation updates from the tribe side as an item?
I think that would be very interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
we could do that.
Yeah,
Yes.
Sounds like we're gonna have a full calendar.
it sounds great. Then we don't have to speak so much.
Who's gonna bring all the goodies? Yeah, right.
They're so far away, we can't eat the.
I know, okay. The other thing is, we do have the meeting ID and the passcode down at the bottom of this agenda. It's something that we want to really have folks out here in our community understand that this is available to them, not only in person, but in a blended format where they can be on here. We want to utilize this system as much as we can to reach out. So if we can share, you got your agenda, talk to your friends. I've talked to 3 or 4 friends of mine, have shared this information that we are now changing. We are now meeting not the 4th Monday, but the 3rd Monday of the month at 5 p.m. here. It's also available on Zoom. So we want folks to know that they come here and have this, utilize this great setup that we have the county's providing to us, as well as in person. And I think that there's an opportunity here to really pull our Scotts Valley community together to really strengthen what we need to do and have a larger voice of what we want to do together and the focus of our valley here. So with that, yes.
I have a question. How does it work when somebody is online and has a question?
Yeah, so it's very simple. It's Zoom. I'm sure everyone's familiar with how Zoom works.
Yeah,
We use
but we
it.
don't see the,
You don't actually see the people. You will hear them though, because when they speak, their voices come through the speaker. Okay. We're also on Lake County PEG TV. That's our YouTube channel. We broadcast live. Any meeting that you would want to go back and maybe you missed something or didn't understand something, you can always go to our YouTube channel, pull up your specific meeting. Now, when you do go to the website and we broadcast these live, the stream is in a different place. So when you pull up YouTube, you're gonna have all these categories across. It's always in playlist under Municipal Area Council, so MAC meetings, or you just click on the live and every municipal area council meeting in all of Lake County since we've been doing it, you'll find it there in live.
okay.
And then depending on the algorithm, because this is how YouTube works, it depends on views. The ones with the most views, of course, get put up front.
Okay,
So this week it's math, Middletown Area Town Hall. You were there. You remember why.
So
and
we,
do we have a chat feature or is it all voice?
I do have a chat when someone does mostly, so good question, because Lucerne, even though they can chime in if they want it all, just ask them to unmute and they're able to speak. For whatever reason, they like the chat feature there. Maybe they don't like to speak online, I don't know. So I do a lot of the repeating what was said in the chat.
So if somebody chats, you'll raise your hand?
Yeah, I'll let council know, yeah.
Okay, great,
I always usually have a microphone so that I can talk back with you.
wonderful.
Or yell at you to speak in the microphone.
So now that you've set up once,
Yeah.
what time can I give the president of the Scotts Valley Women's Club to open the door for you? Is it gonna be 3 o'clock, 3:30? What's your-
3:30 would be a perfect setup time.
So I'll let her know that the future of 3:30 was
Yeah.
when we want to open.
It was
all
just
the
today I
time.
needed to be a little bit early because I didn't, first time being here.
Sure.
I've driven past this place. I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many times.
Right, and you don't need us to be present?
No, nobody needs to be here. Whoever needs to be here at the end to lock the place. I don't know how that works.
Yeah,
so-
what we'll do is when we leave, we lock up, so we'll make sure
Okay.
you have time to
Okay, perfect.
pull
Yeah.
all this down.
Takes me almost an hour, sometimes less, just depends.
Just to set up,
No, setup is about an hour and a half.
and an hour to pull down.
Yeah, about an hour to tear it all down.
Wow.
so we should post this on the Scotts Valley Neighbors Facebook page and maybe where else?
Absolutely, yeah, and put a link in there to the Lake County PEG TV YouTube channel.
Okay,
And I can help you guys navigate there after the meeting. Put a link to that, that way there people can just jump straight on. I bring Starlink, so we're live, the speeds are incredible here, so.
There's also the Bloom with the calendars and things that are going on. That was so called on face. The Bloom and they just,
For the Scotts Valley area?
yeah,
Yeah, okay,
so it was.
yeah.
Okay, anything else besides that? I don't see anything. I call this meeting adjournment at 6:17.
wow, we're early.
Oh.
Thank you, everybody.